is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Greetings, Buffer Timers. We're here again. Sorry to miss you last week. We're going to talk about the final episode of Season 4 of Lower Decks today and do a general recap. Let's start by going around clockwise and introducing ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I am Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
I am Scott of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
And hi, I'm Del. I'm an involved Moopsie. I have gone to my full fruition of evolution, and now I am the Moopsaur.
Oh, that's a cool moniker for the week. All right, we've got a lot of questions, so let's get right into this. The follow-up, it's not really a question, but we had the question a few weeks ago on our last show, how old is Mariner? And we had answers ranging from mid-20s to 40. It seems like the answer is about 31 if you take the star date we had 13 years before, and she was probably 18, maybe 19 at the time. So she's 31, 32-ish.
Do you think she's as old as Boimler and Rutherford and Tendi?
I think she's old, because we know Tendi was like fresh out of the academy. She could have gone late, but I get the impression that she's a little younger. Rutherford's probably the same age, and Boimler might be younger or just in between them all.
Yeah, he said once like they're the same age, but he's probably just estimating.
Yeah, I don't think he necessarily knew at that point.
Right.
So Tendi just gets to keep her title? I thought that was a question specifically here, but it seemed like in that first episode on Orion, she had given her title away to her sister, but now she's like, oh, Mistress of the Winter Constellations, back in the family.
Mm-hmm. It kind of seemed like that was a title
to get the ship. Was the idea that like she was reasserting her dominance so that they would give her what she wanted, and then Dereker called her on it and was like, all right, then you're going to do that.
Right.
So
it kind of made me wonder. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like I just rewatched this. I wanted it to be fresh, and Captain Freeman tried to refer to Dereker as Mistress something, and one can only assume she was coached by Tendi on that. So, what exactly is Dereker's title now?
Well, at least the head of now 2 families, because she's merging with who that dude she got married to. But yeah, that's a good question. I'm guessing we're going to get a whole episode with Tendi being a badass and Orion and maybe like outsmart her sister into getting out and back to Starfleet.
I just hope we see something fun about her character, not about her or what she says, but something just that will explain why she didn't want to be Mistress of the Winter Constellations, more than just I dreamed of going to space or I wanted to get off Orion. I want a little bit more flavor, because that seems like a really big decision for an Orion to make. And so I would like to get maybe a little bit more meat out of whatever episode they choose to resolve the plot in.
And similar to Worf signing on during TNG, how does that change the relationship between the Federation and Orion without establishing diplomatic relations? Because Worf was there after he, correct me if I'm wrong here, and I likely am, but did Worf sign on before or after the Kitamura Accords were signed?
After, because he was, they found him at the aftermath.
At the aftermath. Got it. So it was like right after. Okay. So like Tendi is sort of in reverse, where she signed on before a diplomatic relationship was established, and like what the nature of that relationship will be. What are they going to get out of it for each other? because I don't know what the needs are between the both of them. I understand it's significant because their values are not in alignment, but it's like, why would they ally themselves with each other when their values are nowhere near each other?
Sure. I mean, Worf had more to it because he had human parents, adopted parents, and his dad was in Starfleet, so I can see that. But yeah, Tendi is much more of a mystery. We just know, oh, I don't want to be a pirate. Well, okay, that makes sense, but I'm with Dell. It could use a little bit more fleshing out. And I think we're definitely gonna get some Orion stuff next season.
It's like with Saru, there was a bit more to his species biologically in terms of like what came out of him relating to the Federation and wanting to be on a starship, which was completely inconceivable. Whereas like with these guys, it's not like they're out of touch with the technology. It's just that their principles are nowhere near what Starfleet represents. So.
But I do think, like, in a way, if we would want to talk about this season as being sort of the Marinari season, because it was the one thing they really focused on. And we've seen a similar arc with Boimler and a little bit hinted with Rutherford with the whole implant thing. But Tendi really, this was her first shot at being at least part of the story other than the sidekick. And I really we saw a little bit when they went to Ferenginar, but I would really like to see more meat in Tendi.
Yeah, I think we're going to get there, especially, the way this ended. I definitely, there's no way we're not.
I hope that T'Lyn is not a replacement for Tendi in terms of like the flow of the cast, that this is just a temporary sojourn that she reconnects with Orion in order to facilitate further diplomatic relations and not just like leaving her post, period.
Yeah, just when it looked like we were getting the big five, we're cut back to the big four.
Yeah, and it's not like it needs to be 4 just because, the original Lower Decks focused on 4 lower deckers.
Yeah, with you there, Gannon. That was definitely one of the only things I was like, man, they had a missed opportunity. He had a really middling episode right after with Jeffrey Combs, and you couldn't get him for just one scene. Could be one scene. Brunt, FCA.
It's like you have him in the studio. Just ask him to record the line and then drop it into the next episode.
But one more episode, then you got to pay him specific more royalties because it's a whole other episode. So, I mean, I can kind of see that from like a budget perspective, but it's a missed opportunity.
It's already a cartoon. You're already, saving a ton of money by animating the thing in the first place. And I would appreciate that too.
Okay, so we've dwelled on the Tendi thing here for a bit. We've got a lot of questions. Given that the season's overall theme seemed to be redemptions, should Locarno have gotten a redemption?
It was a good character to pull out of their back pocket who falls under the category of someone who needs or deserves, needs, wants redemption. But I just didn't like this Locarno. Like, I went back and watched the original episode, and I'm missing the evolution. Like, other than, okay, he got bitter. But I think it's that they pulled someone out of thin air. You guys know that I like that sort of thing. But I don't know if the storyline did him justice.
I think what Locarno's main function was to show Mariner what opposition to Starfleet is meant to sort of like create down the road. Like you could go against Starfleet and the principles thereof, but you kind of make something not so great in the process. There's a difference between like criticizing an institution and going entirely against it because it shorted you at one point. So it forces her to make a choice. Does Locarno seem less realistic because of that focus? Yes, it is. To turn a person into a plot device has that problem. But I think when you're going to introduce a character in the next to last episode, you're sort of stuck there.
So really, the follow-up to that, and what Gan's saying about it's a decent conclusion for him to now be the basis of a planet for refugees. Do you think this is the final bit of Locarno, or do you think we will have the search for Locarno someday?
Pretty sure I suggested that, and I don't want the search for Locarno.
Yeah.
I don't think I do either.
It
I
makes
think we
less sense
explored
because,
it
I mean,
enough.
where's his Patra?
It's easy to do in a cartoon to sort of revivify somebody. You did that with Shax, you did that with Boimler to a certain extent. Like it would be easy, but I don't really see what the big reward would be in that case. Like Shax was a beloved character, not so much with this person, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past him.
What did you think of Rutherford's joke? That's not Tom Paris? And Boimler being like, I don't see it. I don't see it.
How do you not see it, Boims? You've got the plate.
You couldn't not do it. There was going
Yeah.
to be a moment when
Somebody had
it was going to be done. And I think when they're on the opposite
that's good.
consoles from each other is a perfect moment for that to happen.
I think it's one of the many, many great Rutherford lines of the season. I mean, his character was of the main four was probably the least utilized this season, but I think he had the funniest, best lines overall. Wonderful one-liners.
Sort of like a
Mostly,
Data-ish type situation where they provide comic relief if nothing else.
Right.
So here's kind of a weird thing that I had picked up on. Does the 289th rule of acquisition, shoot first, count profits later, make sense as a rule that came to pass under Grand Nagus Rom? Now, I could see this as a past rule of acquisition for the Ferengi. I absolutely can, and I love it when we get new rules. But the problem with this is that there were only 285 rules when Rom took over. So this is a new rule, and yeah, for me, it feels weird. Shoot first, count profits later. That doesn't sound like ROM to me.
That doesn't even
That
really sound
doesn't-
profit.
Yeah, it doesn't sound Ferengi-like at all. Honestly.
I was going to say it pushes the line for me for it sounding like something Ferengis would actually be into. Like it, because they're schemers. If they were just shoot first and steal shit, they'd be Orions.
I mean, to be fair, some of them are
Well, yeah.
just not the ones that are officially Ferengi. And hey, Tanya, it's been a while. Glad to see you.
Yeah, you're not going to see a lot of Ferengis like shooting first, especially in negotiation, because most of the rules of acquisition seem to be about, well, acquisition. That's shooting is just going to ruin your negotiations.
Also, like their sort of distinct cultural strength is being able to negotiate themselves out of conflict. So they hadn't had like major conflict with any other sort of empires at all because of that. So this rule sounds completely out of touch with what I understand about Ferengi in general. So either they made it up on the spot, or like some other faction slapped on rules to the Great Book of Acquisition or whatever.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could come up with, is that maybe it's just an offhand joke like the 286th rule that Quark quotes when Morin leaves, I guess it's over, or however he phrased it. Yeah, I'm just making a nice joke, but yeah, it doesn't make sense for me. So, follow up to that, how exactly were the Ferengi going to capitalize on this paywall they put on a bomb? And I love the meta commentary here.
This has been annoying me since I saw it, honestly.
Really?
Like, I kind of get the idea of the Ferengi saying, charging you to stop the detonation of the bomb. What I don't get is why they didn't charge you to arm the bomb in the first place.
I think it was more of a writing decision with the idea that they were going to keep that until the very last minute and then just go pating. The same way that we didn't see a lot of that behavior when they were on Ferenginar, but they did show us like paying to pay to pee. And so I feel like they just didn't want to go down this role of too many too many paywalls, I guess the word you'd look for, in order to do things, because then the joke gets old. Whereas this one felt like it kind of came out of, like a sniper. That's the word I'm looking for.
I honestly also think that this was another example of Ferengi underhandedness. If you had it from the beginning, they wouldn't have purchased it in the first place. So to put the paywall to make it turn off actually makes more financial sense, because it's like, now you can't back out of this. I have your money and you're blown up. So that's.
But how are they going to collect the 2 bars? That's the real question. It's
part
a
of the
great
bomb
joke.
that doesn't explode. It's like a black box.
Like the like Venmo? I don't know.
All right. What would we call Venmo in the Star Trek universe? What name would it have?
I'm on it.
Well, I mean, in general, we see that the Ferengi usually just operate under anything more than a few slips is usually like, oh, just give me your thumbprint scan. But still, like, here, it doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, there could be a thumbprint scan, but what if you're not in range and contact of, whatever payment network?
It's like the world's fastest wire transfer goes through just before it blows up.
Galactic Union.
That works.
Transfer your profits abroad.
Or you're signing off like a life insurance policy that names them as the beneficiaries, and that is the money that gets sent to them versus a paywall thing. I don't know.
So many questions. I mean, it's just Star Trek being Star Trek, commenting on today. Because, I mean, look at how much stuff, including Paramount itself, which some would say, oh, you put my Star Trek behind a paywall. And, I kind of get that, but...
Also, like, for the Ferengi in the first season of TNG are very self-sabotaging in terms of their plans. So they don't necessarily... It'll be, like, profit-driven, but it won't be thought through all the way. Like when they got the very first episode where they got stuck on that planet, they were like getting the Federation stuck too, which doesn't really help them either. So yeah, it was not smart.
I think sometimes we overestimate the intelligence it takes, like, because Quark is so on the ball and he's like the one big example. And then you've got Rom, who's a little bit more normal for a Ferengi, where they do want to plot and scheme and make profit, but they just suck at it. And I think I really liked that about Rom during DS9, because I like the idea that everyone aspires to be something, and some people just have to accept that they're just not that good at it.
Well, with Quark and Rum, it's kind of a difference between, say, book smarts and street smarts. Like Quark's got the intellect to, make a profit and survive, say, on the street, and Rum, he doesn't do that as well. But he's, on balance, he's a pretty good engineer.
Yeah. So switching gears here, was the whole thing on Orion just a callback to Game of Thrones, between the barter by combat? And even like the whole Mountain versus Oberyn thing, where just like they basically both fail. But I guess in this one, just whoever lands on top, wrestling rules.
That was
Games
so
of Triskelion.
Scene.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Everyone take a deep breath, because you're going to need it. I have not seen one episode of Game of Thrones. I didn't see any of it.
Wiener, wiener, wiener.
Dinklage, Peter Dinklage.
Yeah. I guess those duels didn't really take up a lot of plot space for me, so I didn't necessarily see that parallel. But definitely, game like a fight to the death is not an uncommon theme in Star Trek. So pretty well worn.
I really like that they gave Miglimo like something to do rather than just be in the background and be annoying. Like he actually except for when Beth fell, like he was fighting and he was doing a thing, and that turned out he was good at it. in that he knew to ruffle his feathers and spread. That's good. I like that one. Latinamat. And I like it when they pull background characters out and give them like a little time to shine. And I really feel like Miglimu's been, other than the Ferengi episode, he's been underutilized. So I liked that he got a moment in the sun.
Yeah, still the worst technicality.
Yeah, I really like this. I like the joke here with him puffing up, but overall, this whole thing in Orion, it just felt like filler side quest for me. And like, great, okay, well, this gives Tendi a reason to be pulled off for next season, I guess.
It's kind of like the doctor on Enterprise, Phlox.
Yeah, and his fish thing. Yeah, yep.
This thing.
I just thought he looked like a puffer fish.
The tongue thing honestly weirded me out more. That would be more intimidating in a combat situation than like getting bigger, but that's just me.
I guess I have to go back to a different. Okay. Is Nova 1 a callback to Boba Fett's Slave 1 from Star Wars?
I mean, it does
there
tilt
were
up
a
like
lot
that.
of cross references this season to Star Wars, so it would not surprise me if that was another little like shit in that bucket.
Because here's Nova 1 and there's Slave 1. And,
oh wow, that is pretty similar.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been taking a lot of pot shots at Star Wars pretty cleanly this season, but this is like, it seems like George Lucas about to sue somebody.
It's like even more when Nova 1 is up like that, it looks like it looks like a face, and Slave 1 looks like a freaking droid's head. Damn.
I didn't notice, but that's so interesting since there's like, the age-old rivalry between Trekkies and Star Wars folks. So I wonder how, like, what's going on? What's the agenda? Why are they doing this?
Because I hope that Star Wars strikes back with some of their own, like, making fun of Star Trek.
Good stuff. So,
Nice.
Boimler at the con. What did we think about that?
Captain Boims.
It made me so happy. I'm not really a Boimler stan, but this moment made me so happy because he was sitting in the chair and he was functional. He didn't like have a crazy breakdown where he couldn't handle anything. Like he knew what he had to do.
Mm-hmm. I think there have been some people that have questioned the fact that it's like all lower decks on the bridge, like why Freeman needed her entire command crew on the captain's yacht, but I'm good with it. I mean, he was there, he had his friends with him, and it was effective.
We also had that episode earlier in the season where he sort of like stepped up to his position and was able to sort of take on more responsibility. So there was build up to this. They could have maybe sequenced the episodes a bit better for that sort of like arc to not have a dip.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like this was sufficiently built up to, and it was good to see him take command and not feel so unsure of himself in the process.
Yeah, I'm of a couple of mindsets about this one. I love seeing Boimler in the big chair. It's this natural progression from episode 1 when he's, recording the captain's log, and now he's finally in the big chair. Okay, great. But even with what we saw with Carol taking the entire command crew, which I do think is weird, where's Steve Stevens? He's a lieutenant commander. He was not on the captain's yacht.
When did Picard take ensigns with him to go, except for Wesley, who was bridge crew, from the get-go? But I think it's a very common trope in Star Trek that like all of the important officers on the ones on the away team maybe with one guy who doesn't belong.
I
But
think-
like, I feel like especially in
And I
TNG, like all the UA missions were mostly made up of at least the first officer, the security officer, probably ops. Like they were emptying out their bridge for stuff like that too.
I think like Picard is like the one most hands-off captain that we see. Most of them go on the away missions because they're the main character in most seasons of Trek. And what I enjoy about Lower Decks is that they shift focus, but it's not to the detriment of everybody else. It's more of an ensemble thing. So and also like there's plot convenience and then there's military protocol. And sometimes the two are in conflict in Star Trek for sure.
Very true.
So, did Twaining do anything for the plot of this episode, or even for the season as a whole, or for the rivalry between Rutherford and Livik?
Whack. I think Twaining did exactly what it was supposed to do. It showed up as many times as it was supposed to do because it was following the comedy rule of 3. There was the first time between Boimler and Rutherford, then between Freeman and damn it, what was that?
I'm
never gonna remember that.
It was COQQ.
Really?
I think it was COQQ something R, maybe ER. But
Okay.
I want to say it was his name was like she says it and it's in the CC. That's why I
Right.
can remember it.
I can't
yeah,
because
anyway,
it's my
that
least
didn't
favorite
work.
part of the season.
Right.
I
And then you
liked
gotta
it
hear
when it
with
was Boimler and
Rutherford
Rutherford. After that, I was kind of bored of it.
Go ahead,
No,
Scott.
but they're just following the rule. So
Yeah, that's all you can say. Well, if you're gonna make a bad joke, yeah, at least make it 3 times, I guess.
Mhm.
But going back to Game of Thrones, they did that across the series with the jackass and the honeycomb and the brothel.
They were pretending
just
to
comes
be
out of
Mark
nowhere.
Twain.
oh yeah.
No,
I really should have caught the show. I would totally watch a high fantasy show in which all of a sudden there are 2 Mark Twains.
I do declare, I think there are dragons here.
That's Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah.
So is it here. That's kind of the problem.
That
It's not even Mark Twain.
I think it's just a really funny, stupid joke where they took 2 people that worked out their problems through this weird role playing and thought, you know what, this seems to be a good way to solve interpersonal issues and transpose it on another situation. I think it's simple as that. I think it's dumb. I think it's ridiculous. I thought it was hilarious. I will die on the hill of that being just one of my favorite parts of this series, of the season.
How about the fact that Talin was the one that specifically recommended this? That for me is like even more of a deal breaker. It's like she has come up with some of the best stuff and the most logical, awesome solutions. And this one, I just like, ugh. Not a
But
good
it was
suggestion.
also
Talin.
during at least I don't remember if it was the second to last or last episode of Talin really kind of going Cerritos strong. And this is something that her friends had done and worked for her friends. So I could see in an ensign's logic or a lieutenant junior grade that it's a known thing that solves problems. We need these 2 people to sit down and talk to each other. Maybe if we do it in a silly setting, it will help them.
Right. It kind of takes the pressure off of their situation, like having to maintain acrimony with someone that you're while impersonating Samuel Clemens is it's just not going to happen. And that actually is, I think, a very effective conflict resolution tool to sort of like take it and make like the relationship stronger by taking the seriousness out of the conflict.
Okay.
I'll still be okay if they never use it again. 3 times is
But
enough.
please, for the love of God.
Just move on to fiscal data.
So we didn't even have a question here, but I just want to throw this out here. I love that we finally get to see Josh Albert, the red shirt walking.
And I was happy they brought back all of the voice actor. Like they brought in Will Wheaton. They brought in the person who originally played Cedo, whose name is evading me right now.
And she hasn't acted since just after that episode.
I know. And they had
Shannon,
they had
Phil?
Locarno, obviously.
Yep, Shannon Phil. Okay.
And there's a shot like at the beginning of the episode where like the 5th member of Nova Squadron's like running away from the group. I think that's kind of your background, Dustin, actually.
Well, because
yeah, I just have the Academy.
She's the other one. And the rest here in Starfleet Academy.
And I do love that in this background that you get, oh, you can't quite see it in this one, but Boothby. I love that there's a little Boothby. Nice.
On his way to teach Chakotay how to box.
Yeah.
I want there to be a plot line in one of the shows that Boothby and Carol Kane's character on Strange New Worlds are actually married and both long-lived.
Oh, okay.
Would that not be adorable?
Yes. Would be awesome. It's too bad the actor died just after he did the last time he did Boothby in Voyager.
In certain video games, you can make your entire bridge Boothby. So that is a possibility.
Now that sounds like a challenge for if we ever do Star Trek the role-playing game here.
Which we should.
We'll all do Boothby. It can be a holodeck adventure.
Different Boothby eras. Let's do it.
I like the way you think. Okay, so we've only got one more regular question just about this specific episode before we get into our out of 10 and our and then go into the recap. Is the Captain's Yacht the most tragically underused set piece in Trek lore?
We sat down and tried to think about it, and I think we only came up with one incident before this, where it was very clear they were in the Captain's Yacht.
Yeah, I think they've actually been in it twice in Lower Decks, but they've never flown it until now. And the only other time we've seen it was in Insurrection, and it doesn't do much. It just goes from point A to point B for a minute.
So is this like the deluxe shuttle?
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's
the
just
shuttles keep getting
Captain's Yacht.
bigger and fancier, and then they have like a back room to sleep in and a rep. I remember when it was a cardboard box that could barely fit Data and Geordi in it together, and now like they can have a dinner table where they're talking about the conference they just went to, and then with Voyager being able to just create shuttles out of thin air. Like, I've given up on shuttle logic on Star Trek.
Well, I mean, specifically, the thing is that the Captain's Yacht has been a thing since at least the Enterprise D. It never gets seen or used or talked about. I remember seeing it in the Star Trek Encyclopedia back in like 1993 and being like, well, that's pretty cool. When do we get to see this? And then we wouldn't actually see it till a movie that it barely gets used in, and then here another 30 years later.
I think some callbacks are sort of plot conveniences, and that's fine in like a cartoon world a bit.
Right.
Okay, do we have any other specific questions about this final episode?
I liked the whole we're going to throw a battleship at it. Like, I like that they came to that conclusion. I like that they came up with a plan to make it happen, and it worked. Like, it reminded me of fighting the Shriek. Like, where everything is kind of screwed up and no one knows what's going on.
I'm actually
just like throw rocks at them.
The other side of that. I hate it. And it's not so much for what the Cerritos did. Like, okay, great. They came up with a plan. They used this piece of shit ship. Wonderful. My problem is for how perfect and indefensible shield that the Binars have built for Locarno. And like, all we had to do was throw a junk ship at it. That's it. You know, for as much as it was talked up, and they were so surprised. Oh, well, I didn't think they were going to throw a starship at it. but it wasn't even much of a ship, so that's why I'm just like, it seemed too convenient was all. But
That
sure, what
was
you're saying about the Cerritos crew coming up with the plot, great.
I think you may have changed my mind, because the thought I had reflecting on what you were saying is like, if all they needed to do was throw a ship at it, why can't a ship just drive itself through it?
Well,
Like,
you
why
gotta throw one
do you
ahead of
need
it,
an
but
empty, heavy ship? Like, you
I
could
think
just.
it was, I think there was, I don't know if you're accounting for this already, and if you are, I'm sorry, but I think they mentioned that it wasn't functional, and that's why they used it as a battering ram versus like a,
yeah,
yeah.
because the Billups and and Livik say it's going to be like it would take months to just even get it to move on its own. So, I get why they used it. It seemed really easy way to move the plot forward and get through
Yeah.
Ricardo's nefarious plan.
Right. Like I bought the character development and the arc, and I bought that Locarno had beamed some folks to a planet. This is the part where I was like, this is getting into comic book pacing, where they know that something is about to wrap up and they kind of have to make things gel in such a way where things move forward at a very rapid pace. And yeah, I feel like this device has been used before. Wasn't there one of the newer Star Trek movies that used this on like a shield around Earth or something like that? There was some kind of explosion. Anyway, it kind of reminded me of that. I thought it was okay. I didn't really mind it so much. I just thought like, okay, this is getting from point A to B. It's not the most offensive thing I've seen them use to do that.
Great.
Any more questions before we go for our out of 10 on this episode and move on to the general recap? All right. Well, I am going to start by giving this. I had given the first episode in this two-parter a 9, which I really liked it. This one, there's more things to like, I think, but also more little things that I did not like. So I'm going to give it just a little bit less and give it an 8.5.
I'd give it a 9. There were definitely weak points in terms of like pacing, credibility, in terms of like things getting from one point to another. However, I think the conclusion that it drew finally, like, if Mariner goes backward from here, that would be really frustrating. Like this is really the point of the episode, to have Mariner go, okay, I'm full into, Starfleet and what it stands for, and I'm not going to self-sabotage to the point where I demote myself, kind of thing. And not just because my first officer is keeping me from doing that. So I liked it for that reason. So definitely 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd also go with a 9 here. Because one thing Lower Decks really knows how to do is how to end a season. It's mostly satisfying, even if I didn't really want to see Tendi go. I enjoyed the many references to Wrath of Khan. They worked very well for me. I never really expected Locarno to be redeemed, so when he went down in the way he did, that definitely worked. The idea of throwing a battleship at an indestructible shield, sure, why not? And yeah, even I know like Twin Twains, it didn't work for some people, but it just brought the comedy rule to a close. So hopefully we'll never see it again. And yeah, that's about it all around.
I'm usually very nitpicky, and my score gets lower the more I nitpick. But I enjoyed these 2 episodes so much, I'm going to give them a 9. I think the last time we spoke, the last episode, I gave it an 8, but I'll bump it up because these 2 episodes together worked really well for me.
Okay.
Justin, you are muted.
Well, I get the average here. If you guys want to go over what did you think of T'Lyn bookending her season with a pad and a communique to Captain Sokol?
Oh yeah, it's good attention to detail.
I was rewatching stuff over the last 2 days, and I had literally just watched the episode where the Betazoid spies were on board, and it turned out it was not them but Tendi who was not Tendi, T'Lyn, that made everyone go nuts. And that was also about contacting her commander to try to come back. I really like that we bookend it with the idea that like now she's cool and she wants to stay where she is.
It shows continuity that this character has evolved since they have gotten on the Cerritos. They're not just 1 foot in, 1 foot out because they're being punished. But this person has finally found some sort of solidarity with their fellow crewmates in a way where they don't feel like they're walking on eggshells and like, gosh, if I make an instinct-driven decision, I might be thrown out kind of thing.
Right.
Will Orion sacrifice its exploitive nature to join the Federation?
No way.
It would have to be a sort of like leadership change on the scale of ROM for that to happen. Maybe Tendi takes over. Maybe that's what they're building up to. I don't see her being quite so ruthless as to do something like that, but I do see even entertaining a relationship with Federation at all is a big shift.
Well, the question is, will she be able to, or even her sister? I mean, you're talking about merging 2 criminal enterprises, but they were still, the 5th house or like the 5th largest family. So is that going to be enough to overthrow, say, I don't know, the largest family in the syndicate or even 2nd largest? And I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least an episode, maybe 2, that kind of deals with that. Is probably a B plot to an episode.
I feel like we've seen the future of the Orion and that they haven't changed very much. And I feel like it would be a little jarring for them to now all of a sudden have joined the Federation before Osira happens. Like, it just seems, I know that's a lot of years separation, but it would make me feel a little wonky about continuity.
I think Discovery is far enough ahead in time that like a relationship with the Federation could credibly happen in the interim. But it is a big. They traded Tendi away for a 7th round pick in advantage.
Go Vikings, by the way. Go Vikings, Gannon.
Yeah, I think like 1,000 years is a long time in terms of like diplomatic relationships forming and dissolving. A lot can happen.
I mean, I also, I'm even when I look backward at like Enterprise, they've been depicted as the same thing, and it would be like if we were visiting with Grand Nagus Zek, and then all of a sudden we found out that Rom had been the Nagus for like 80 years, and then Zek took over again. Like, that's what it would feel like in my head. It would be like, but wouldn't if someone had said this at some point by now?
Well, I think like if we're if in that timeline, it would behoove the Orions not to mention a possible relationship in the past, so that they could feel even more like it's an impossible task. That's what my understanding of what their motives might be, because as you can see through this episode, deception is part of their MO.
Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
You may have a point.
How do we feel about the explanation or backstory explaining Mariner's behavior this season, and presumably all of the weird, hang-ups she's had through the series?
I found it really disappointing. I don't like that she turned on a dime over one emotional conversation with a Klingon in a cave or a tree root thing. I don't like how they portrayed her before that. I think at some point, like, if she's really doing this because of Ceto, at some point she's going to have to buck up and take responsibility. And I don't think it would have taken 4 seasons for that to happen.
No, I think it took, I'm with you. I think it took too long to get to this revelation. This should have been like a season 3 at most kind of thing.
I think the triggering event is her promotion and then
Right.
being unable to be demoted under her own volition, no matter what she did. She knew that something was up in terms of like, I have to face something about myself because I'm not being demoted like old times. So what's up with me that I keep pushing for this?
Yeah, it would be great to get some Wallace Shawn back in the house here. For
Sure.
real.
But that's just inconceivable.
Inconceivable!
Oh,
It was low fruit sitting right in front of me. I couldn't ignore it.
Ba-dum-tsh.
Exactly.
As for
oh, but if they got him to be like, never go in against the Grand Niggers when death is on the line.
truth.
Hanging right next to it. I mean,
So, was Rutherford as a character fleshed out more this season, or did he take a back burner to Mariner and Tendi? And I think you can even add Boimler to this question.
oh yeah. The
I feel
last
like his
season was-
only real plot was that he roomed with Boimler.
Pretty
Mhm.
much. I mean, he got that thing where he got to advocate for himself, and he got his promotion a little after everybody else. But that's been it.
Yeah, that was like just like that though. Yeah, last season was really Rutherford's season to grow because we figure out what happened with his implant and the whole thing with Badgie. And we're talking about this like nothing happened to him. There's a whole episode involving Badgie, which he created,
That's
and
true.
we're not looking at it like it helped to advance his character.
Yeah, he was only like a normal part of that, about as much as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said before, the one-liners this season and the stuff that he got set up for, little things like this, the freaking pockets, love it.
Right?
Something as simple as pockets gets me excited. Things like this, and when Boimler is on Ferenginar and there's a freaking toilet in his room, I get excited for a toilet because these are things we don't get to see, pockets and toilets in Star Trek.
They just pull their phasers out of thin air and their excrement
yeah.
just gets beamed out into space into poo balls, and that's it.
I have to admit
Yeah, it goes into
that
the replicator.
the pocket joke made me think there's like this low-level debate that's been going on like all year on certain like websites about how girls' pants don't have pockets and men's pants do. And I really was hoping for like Rutherford to turn his pockets out and be like, I have pockets. And then Jax be like, I don't. Like, make some closer reference to the idea that like some pants come with pockets and some come with little fake pockets.
Very true.
Does Tendi using her position within the Orion race when it benefits have moral ambiguity? Or is that absolved because she does it for the right reasons? I don't know. I just think the whole thing where she's like renounced it and then come back to it's all weird for me.
But if we're
Guess we'll see
talking
where it
about
goes.
someone who is raised on Orion, no matter how much she rejects her upbringing, I can see that she would feel like, well, if it gets the job done, then I'm happy to play the part.
I did really like this, like, about face, like, you got this, and then she puts the face on, and that's the mistress of the winter constellations. That was cool.
Yeah. But when they were on Orion, it didn't seem like maybe she'd renounced it by then, but it didn't seem like they cared. Like she was still mistress of the winter constellations wherever she went.
I guess it's a question of, can she renounce it even if she like states it, because she's still in the family, she still associates with them. So is she even able to? And I don't think it's above a Federation or a Starfleet members station to use their relationships on their home worlds in the benefit of Starfleet in the moment. So I think it's in line with a Starfleet officer for sure.
Have we seen the last of Peanut Hamper and or Agamus?
No.
I hope not. I didn't even know I was down for them getting redeemed, and apparently I am.
I just would like to know what they would add at this point. Their sort of ethical sort of waffling is only entertaining for so long. Like, if that's the running joke where they can't really decide whether they're for good or evil, I guess that could work, but that would run out of runway at a certain point too.
Yeah, I think it kind of has. I mean, it was always kind of a thin plot as far as Jeffrey Combs voiced people and things in Star Trek. This is probably right down there with the whatever his name was in his first appearance as that random scumbag that wants Hollow Kira. And actually, that might be more interesting, to be honest. So I hope they don't come back. But I will say, I hope we see Badgie one more time in his ascended form. I need more Black Mountain in my life. We're
Right.
definitely not done with the Black Mountain and the Great Koala and stuff like that. So, like, if we go back there, I fully expect there to be Badgie.
I really hope we get like a full organization formed around the idea of the Great Koala and the Black Mountain. That's my hope.
I'd like to see someone who's actually like a dedicant of that universal view, like someone for whom that is really their religion. Or at least, like, maybe if we don't want to get into religion on Star Trek, which I have no problem with, but some people do, we could talk about it as like a philosophical point of view.
Yeah,
it's very Black Lodge. The pattern on the floor.
I'll skip ahead to another question that relates to that, especially what you just said, Del. Is the Great Koala a religion or a cult? And does it fit the basic tenets of a deity/supreme being? Definitely. I mean, it is God. Star Trek has now gotten, Lower Decks has gotten me to the point where I will replace the word God in most things, like, common terms, with the Great Koala. Like, by the Great Koala. It's the thing I say now, and I love the show, and I love this idea.
There are people in the real world who build pantheons out of comic book characters that they want to enshrine or exhibit the behaviors of, or there are people who believe in anime characters. There are people, I mean, if you think of believing in what we call mythology, this is just current myth. There are a lot of people who look at the Endless from Sandman as being a pantheon.
Ooh,
and so I wouldn't be surprised if some young spiritual adventurer sees this koala. Maybe it's another great flying spaghetti monster, but I mean, there are people who actively like hold rituals to the spaghetti monster. I know because I've been to one. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's real people now going like, I like this worldview of death. It's like this mountain that you have to ascend. And that maybe if you're successful, you get to come back. Like, that sounds like a really cool version of reincarnation. It's also very close to the Scientology version of reincarnation, but not exactly.
It kind of reminds me of like a chapter out of like the Principia Discordia. If anybody's read that, apparently it was written by Nixon on acid. I don't know if that's the case for real. There are these sort of like dialogues that they have throughout, and it's very similar to things like this, where it's purposefully absurdist and sort of like pushes you to think for yourself in a very evocative way. I don't think it's a cult because there's no superstructure. It's just you encounter this godlike thing.
But there are real people who identify as Discordians.
Yes, exactly.
And, I mean, I may or may not have a copy of the Principia Discordia over there. I may have bought 100 copies of it and went to a pagan event and left them in all the cabins and all the beds, including on the lifeguard chair, in the cafeteria. Like, a friend of mine and I were just like, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
So yes, we covered the entire camp with copies of the Principia Discordia.
That's awesome. I like it's almost like Boimler's gray face and Koala is Eris or something. Yeah. So I see it from that perspective, but I don't like it if a cult has more codified, like, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was one within this universe. But I don't think it is, at least from what we understand of it.
I think their eagerness to show a crew member in a hijab, I feel like they're willing to toe the line about religious behavior and such. So I could see this becoming either a cult is a hard word, but I would say like a minority religion. Because when you say cult, you think of like bad cults. There are good cults, but they don't get they get called cults because they look like instead of a minority religion.
I'm just gonna say as a side note, where each season of Lower Decks kind of corresponds to one of the TOS movies, and they use that as like the poster. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the next season should be corresponding to Star Trek V. I need to know what the koala needs. What does a koala need with a starship? We're gonna have to explore that next season.
I'm gonna mute so I can. They're gonna find him at the center of the galaxy and everything.
I hope so. We're gonna find him on the Black Mountain. We're gonna find that the Black Mountain is an actual place that you can go.
Yep.
And then we would see how Shax came back. That I actually want to see that buttoned up, like that loose end tied up.
Like what happens at the top of the Black Mountain?
Yeah, Boimler's was just while you're in the waiting room. Yeah, this is easy, but clearly there's. Some people have harder trials than others because Shax was like, oh, that place took a lot out of me. And Boimler's like, oh, I had to wait in the waiting room for about 5 minutes.
I would love it if Boimler tells Jax, like, yeah, I spoke to the koala. And Jax be like, it spoke to you? That you're so much luckier than I am.
So back to Mariner for a minute. Do we think her parents know the reason behind her behavior?
I think if they were at least aware of the connection, the scenes that we've seen with Freeman talking to her husband, maybe it would be referenced when they're trying to figure out her behavior. Like, I think they would have made some sort of reference.
It seemed like they were portraying a very typical Army brat relationship where their parents are very disengaged and sort of career focused to the point where they are not curious about Mariner's inner world. In season 1, Mariner and Freeman were going to team up as a way to sort of heal their relationship, but that was sort of snapped apart at the beginning of season 2. So I thought that they were just basically trashing an opportunity for her to know like what her motives were. I feel like they were just sort of like willfully ignorant of it.
Yeah, I don't think they know who their kid is. I think it's pretty obvious. If they did, they would have been able to get her on the right path by now. I mean, her dad had to pull some favors just to get her to be with her mom on the Cerritos. and not get kicked
Right.
out of Starfleet to begin with before the series started. So it's clear that they don't really know. They don't know her or know what to do with her. Nor do I think Mariner really knew what to do with herself until right now. But here's the thing, like, I haven't been crazy about this, like, season 1 Mariner persisting for 4 seasons, and it really needs to end. She's come to the resolution, she's come to some peace with it. You know, she might not be done. She's still probably working through some stuff, but it needs to, her character needs more growth going forward and not dwelling.
And also we need to be able to focus on the growth of other characters versus
Yes,
having
sure.
like a character catch up with everybody else. We can focus on maybe Rutherford or T'Lyn or something next season.
Yeah, I feel like Boimler got a little shafted this season. Not that I consider him to be the main character, but like,
Right.
he is sort of the heart of the show, and it just felt like I want to see him progress and become more of like a leader, I guess, or command. And he was getting there, but it was just like, here's a crumb of Boimler plot for you, and here's a whole pizza worth of Mariner.
Right. Like in that episode of on Ferenginar, he was just watching television the whole time in his underwear and drinking Sluggo Cola. And
We've all been there before. We have all been there before.
It was the most relatable thing I think Boimler's ever done.
We have all been in our underwear eating terrible food, wrapped in a blanket, watching TV for way too long.
Exactly. And then on that other episode, he was sort of sidetracked to have Shax sort of watch over him all day long. God, the tighty whities.
One of my favorite screenshots of the season, for sure.
I love the red eyes, just fixed gaze, and the pad on the side just on. It looks like it's out of battery. Yeah, it's great.
And by the way, Gannon, yes, I get the reference here. I'm talking about Leonardo da Vinci. Ciao, Da Vinci. Ciao, Tendi. So let's get to we've only got a couple more questions here. Starting to run out of time. These are the hard-hitting ones. What were your favorite moments of the season? I'll give you, like we just said, I love this little joke with Boimler. Even if I didn't think it was anything, it was just kind of filler. That was funny. Love Moopsy. Yeah, I'm going with those. Those are my 2 favorites.
The puppet, Freeman choking the puppet, that was my favorite. The funniest thing I think I've ever seen on Lower Decks. It was so unhinged, and it went on for just long enough where you're like, how long is this gonna go, kind of thing. And like the realization that it was a sentient thing and not a puppet was like because it definitely looked like a puppet. And also yeah, I think understanding Mariner's background was a very satisfying moment for me. Yeah, I just feel like, yes, we're getting character development, thank God. And I do think it explains a lot of her sort of chaotic neutral alignment up until this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed. Yeah, definitely liked Moopsy, and also the bits and pieces of character development for Ransom, of all people, who turns out is not just some musclehead jock, but actually cares enough to keep Mariner from destroying herself, and is paying enough attention to apparently speak Tamarian, and later on knows art, I guess. I like that chat.
It was in the teeth. It was great.
Laughed out loud at the shot from Tuvix of Schwalens. I don't know even know how many times I've been like, I want to fish.
Yeah, I was just thinking like if we had gotten Michael McKean back as the clown in that one, I would have thrown that one in there as a favorite moment. As is, that was only okay.
Yeah.
You'd think I'd be prepared for this question, and I'm totally not. I really like Tendy's. If I'm talking about like serious, I really like Tendy's plotline this season. If we're talking about like bits, I like Lynn's delivery of a lot of stuff, like the "oops, my data has been corrupted," like little things like yes, exactly, like little
You think in
things
one
like
line?
that from her, where she's still sticking to the Vulcan thing, but like pulling the wool just a little bit up so we can see that she is more than just the Vulcan. And I mean, I will always love anything that happens on Ferenginar forever and ever. The Ferengi are my favorite Star Trek race, so like I was in for the Ferengis.
Yeah, it was nice to see Rom again for sure.
And Lita kicking ass.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like, I mean, Rom's always been an idiot, but he was like over the top an idiot, and I get that some of that they were like using it to play up the Federation
Yeah, that was
and mess
totally
with
an act.
Freeman, but even then, it felt like it did his character a disservice as a whole. It was nice to see him.
Yeah, freaking Admiral Vassery. My gosh.
So, on the other side of that question, what were your least favorite points of the season? And for me, the top one there is an easy Twaining. Please, can we never ever do this again?
For me, I think it's like the caves episode. I get what they were going for. It was sort of like a flashback of episodes that never happened kind of thing. And sort of
Yeah.
like it's a very common trope in series to sort of like, hey, remember that time? And, you know, go through each cast member and have them sort of bind together at the end. That's a very typical trope. I don't feel like it was very fulfilling because we didn't have any connection with those memories. And also, like, it was just like playing on trope after trope of like cave episodes. I don't know. That's like the biggest sin a show can commit is being forgettable. And I thought that was the forgettable one.
That's fair. I think the worst part, besides Mariner's kind of like gear stripping turn in the last episode, or second to last episode, you know, was the multiple episodes this season where I could have cared less about the B plot. They had a decent main story, and then what was going on, behind the scenes, or just the subplot is like, okay, whatever. Which does technically include Twin Twains, although I did like that they brought it back for 3, but at the same time, which one was it? In the Cradle of Vexilon. I cared about that. I cared about what was going on with Boimler. The other 3 getting pranked and like Rutherford playing the freaking Wadi Chula game, I didn't care at all. Although I do think Slop Jazz is all about the slop you don't drip.
That is such a Riker kind of callback. I love it.
I do like the bit of the box. That was always like it wasn't Haven, I think, the first time.
Yeah.
And it just like threw up jewels and died. It's so weird.
And Armin Shimmerman's first appearance in Trek, and it's uncredited.
I guess I found the Mariner plot to be very repetitive. It's like, oh, look, she's going to go rogue and do something that will either save us or kill us. Let me watch this again. But also, admittedly, I don't care for Mariner as much as other people do. I am much more into Boimler and Rutherford and, well, Levy. But I think the worst crime for me was no second reappearance of Moopsy. I really would have liked it, but I agree with Vanessa that there is some To the Caves episode that's kind of repetitive and weird, but I can't hate it because Levy's in it, and I love Levy. What else? Come on. I'm also this season. I've watched all 4 seasons, but I don't have a great memory. But it wasn't like at least one scene was a bunch of people humping on each other in like more than 2 episodes.
Naked time.
Yeah, like there was the Umox Rub Dungeon. There was two Orion clubs. There was every episode had some scene where people were getting sexy. And it almost feels like because they've done jokes, very successful jokes in this plot line, like in this milieu, that they were just keep throwing up, just everyone be sexy. And I mean, and for me to complain that there's too much sex in something is a big deal. But it was a little repetitive, like every planet has a dungeon, let's go.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Orion and Ferenginar are 2 places that stand out that for me in my mind that seem like...
Yeah, but we also had the Betazoid episode where everyone went crazy hump dungeon on the Cerritos.
Yeah, also the Betazoids would be a third on that. I mean, they are, frisky.
I'm not saying that it's not plausible that they would exist. I'm talking from a writer's perspective. Like, it's starting to feel a little too horn doggy to have, like
they just basically tell the same joke.
Yeah.
Through different ways. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I guess, like, the only thing that got me about the Orions was how they sort of zhuzhed it to make it less exploitative. And I don't know how I feel about that, because that's sort of the thing that's in opposition to the Federation and their principles, but it is a cartoon. So I guess I understand why they were trying to, like, not make it as messed up. But yeah.
They made references, though. I mean, like the fact that it looked very much like a matriarchy, that the pheromone dungeon shows that there's still women controlling men or females controlling males using the pheromones to make them lick their feet or do nice things for them or whatever. So I feel like I get it, but it just, I don't know. Sorry, that was incomplete.
No, I see it as like an inversion of what they are canonically. And so it's like patriarchal, very like top down, very like women aren't people kind of thing. And I don't necessarily think that this is the exact opposite, because these aren't not people in terms of like Orion society. It seems like they were getting paid and treated not as badly. And then like so it doesn't have that same exploitative infrastructure. I get that they're trying to like not hit the same notes, because I think putting that in here the episode would basically have to be about that. So they're trying to like shortcut around it, I think.
Here's the thing that I both didn't and liked as a growth thing this season. I didn't like in Vexilon, the B plot, which is actually, I guess, technically the A plot, but it didn't get as much time, where Carol is just, she breaks Vexilon and screws around, and she's just bearing Carol, and she makes things worse. And then what I liked was how a couple more points within the season after that, it's finally like, oh my God, the captain of the dumbest ship in Starfleet finally got some growth and picked some things up, like when the whole like bounty hunter thing, how she was just a distraction and she always meant Billups to get the stuff as a bounty hunter. I really liked her growth. I hated that in the 3rd episode we're still like, oh, Carol is still just a bumbling captain, and now she's finally doing something good. So
Yeah, and
So-
before that, she outnegotiated the Ferengi, so it's like they were building up to it.
yep.
Good character.
Yeah, that was the first one that I was like, hey, Carol did the right thing. It wasn't somebody else cleaning up her mess.
My mother, growing up, would ask me questions about things that she already knew the answer to see if I knew the answer. Little things in the beginning, but then bigger as they got. Before I came out to my mom, she was like, "Do you know what lesbians and gays are? Have you ever heard those words before?" So I feel like with Freeman, she's kind of doing that. Like, she has this exterior of being kind of unsure and trying new and strange things, but inside she's a smart chicken. Like, I think she knows what she's doing when she acts goofy.
Okay.
That's fair.
All right, just a couple more questions before we get out of here. How is this season compared to the previous ones for you? For me, I don't think it's the best season. I think it might have some higher moments, some of the best moments of the series compared to the past seasons. But as a whole, yeah, the middle and beginning kind of dragged until it got better and better towards the end. Especially the Betazoids episode. I think that was the low point for me this season. Even then, it's serviceable. At worst, Lower Decks is serviceable.
And it also advanced Lynn's storyline
Yeah.
pretty well. For me, it's probably the best season overall so far, because we get character development that has been a long time coming from, and the promotion, I think, is a big deal to get promoted, because then you're having to reckon with additional responsibilities and what those entail, and possibly even having to order people to put their lives at risk is a huge thing to fathom. And what that does to someone's psyche, that your decision led to somebody else's death, either directly or indirectly, is a big issue. And, similar to like Strange New Worlds, where they had that sort of flashback to the time where the two doctors were together and seeing all this carnage, it's like they carry these experiences with them forward into their career, and ideally would help them make better decisions. But it's also like a wound that is on them all the time. And I feel like that is a very relatable thing. I think Mariner has gone from being this just sort of like chaotic, neutral being to being one of the most relatable people on modern Trek for me. So I think it's the best one.
Yeah, I'm going to be way more simplistic than that. Looking at the season overall, I look at it as being better than seasons 2 and 3 by the simple virtue of the fact that I don't look at any of these episodes and think, wow, I do not want to ever watch those again. There were, unfortunately, standout examples of that in seasons 2 and 3 for me, specifically An Embarrassment of Duplicates and Minding the Mind's Minds. So if you can give me 10 reasonably consistent episodes with a pretty fair rewatch value, then yeah, you've put out a good season. I don't know how I would stack it up yet, like against season 1, because in my opinion, it started with a pilot and every episode got better until the finale. But it's definitely better than the 2 seasons that came before it.
I think actually, I think it's better than season 1 for me, and I don't know if season 2 and 3, I would have to rewatch them. Particularly 3 with Crisis Point 2, because that might be my favorite episode of Lower Decks.
Okay.
I got a really unique view of this because my partner watched this season with me, but had not watched Lower Decks before. And one, she immediately wanted to go back to the first episode and watch the rest of it, which I think says something. But I got to watch the whole series within the last 2 weeks. I think this is the one where if I'm going to watch an episode, like a single episode or 2 episodes, I think it's going to be this season. I liked the Duplers, and it was the first one I showed her when she was like, I want to see more. But that's just because it's ridiculous. I liked that it had hills and valleys, that there were some episodes that were a little bit as serious as Lower Decks gets, and that there were other ones that were just completely hilarious and didn't really serve too much of a point. So I would think this is my favorite season.
Cool. So the last thing we have to talk about, what do you want to see next season, and do you have any predictions?
I think we finally need to see Will Boimler in Section 31.
Yeah.
It would not be nice to leave that particular plot thread hanging.
I never thought we were going to see them this season. I always thought that was something that would like come back and develop. I knew a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's Will Boimler in the mystery ship." Like, no, it's not going to be Will Boimler. That's too obvious.
We already had Thomas Riker do that.
I like the idea that Lower Decks, even though it's a cartoon, is attempting to world build by creating diplomatic relationships with Orion. So how does that pan out? And what does that do? And what advantage does that give them? I also am very, like you, Dustin, pro Black Mountain, pro koala. Really want more of that.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more Black Mountain. I think we're going to see more Orion stuff. I think we're going to find out what a koala needs with a starship. Will Boimler. And I think we'll get Badgie back as part of said Black Mountain experience.
Will someone out there who is more talented than me make like a little avatar of what Dustin just said about... Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't stop laughing.
Oh, but what does the koala need with the starship? Yeah, we need shirts made up. That sounds like a great thing.
I want like an avatar I can put on Facebook or something. Because that's the funniest thing I've heard all day.
That koala would really like fit in that light too, or in that energy beam or whatever it was.
So the person who just chatted is my brother, who was here last week and watched me live, and now he's now addicted to you guys as much as me. So he loved it. He watched it knowing it was going to spoil the end of the season for him because he hadn't caught up. But it was great to have him here, but it was even super greater that he fell in love with us. So yeah. Hi, babe.
Yay.
Well, what do you
All
do?
right. Any more questions or final thoughts here on season 4 of Lower Decks?
I think the only thing I want to add is this is the first time I'm like actively on the edge of my seat for the next season. Like I really want to see where this is going now.
Yes.
That's fair. I think there was something. Wait. I think there's something in here with me. What the hell?
Oh no. We've
Hi,
lost Scott.
It was nice knowing you. I did care about your opinions every once in a while, and I just hope that the Black Mountain is smooth and easy to climb for you, and that when you reach the top, you can send us psychically what happens on the Black Mountain. He was a good friend. He's a good YouTuber and a great Star Trek fan. I'm going to miss him greatly.
May the koala
bless you, Scott.
That's
Koala
right.
bless you. Moopsies. They're unpredictable. You never know when they're going to come for you. Protect your bones, people. Until next season, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully Scott's okay. And if he's not, oh well. We'll catch you next season. Thank you guys for showing up and talking Trek.
And we have a schedule of upcoming episodes now that there's no regular season that we're going to mention right here and now.
Yep, I might even not have a graphic ready for you. But yeah, we're gonna circle back. We're gonna be talking about some strange new worlds here come next week. The one before those old scientists, I can't remember the name of it, but that's where we're starting next week. So come and chime in, and I really can't wait until we get to those old scientists and Subspace Rhapsody, because I know a lot of us have a lot of different opinions and things to say about that one. Anyway, everybody, until then, live long and prosper.